So again, if you notice, as we're talking about the beginning of the 13 colonies, we can't talk about colonies if we don't define what a colony is. So somewhere in your notebook, you need to jot down this definition. You notice it's on the anchor chart. A territory that is governed by another country. A colony is a territory that is governed by another country. Get that jotted down. So while you're jotting down the definition of colony in your notebooks, talk about that again a little bit more. These other countries started to realize that leaving people here in these little territories to work and to take what they could as far as resources was more beneficial for them monetarily, because they didn't have to come over here and then wait for people to get all the stuff together. As they would get here, the resources that they were after were already being like farmed or harvested from the forest or taken from the ground or yanked out of the sea, whatever they were doing. It depends on where you were. The colonies were able to be doing the work while the ships and the merchants were going back and forth between England, Spain, France, and other areas where the trade routes were running. So a colony is a territory that is governed by another country. So I want to talk about this meeting house. And they had these, and it wasn't like one meeting house per colony. This was like in the little towns inside of the colonies. There were meeting houses. Now the meeting house served many different purposes. During the week, they would hold their assemblies there. The men, if you noticed in the video that we watched, only the men were allowed in the meeting house during the week, because they were discussing all of the laws and politics and the ways that the towns were going to run. They were getting news back and forth from what home country they were from, and they were passing these news and laws on to the people that lived in the colony. And at that time, it was just the men. Now, this is very different from the way that the Native Americans ran things, isn't it? When we studied the Native Americans, it was like this balance of power. No one had more power than another person, and each person had very important jobs to do. But in this one, it was purposefully excluding the women from the meeting house and kind of expecting them to just stay home and take care of the kids and the things around the house. That has to be done, but that doesn't exclude you from taking part and making decisions in the town, in my opinion. But that's not how they did that then. That might come into play later on for some of you when we do our project portion at the end of today. But a meeting house, it's a building. It's used for public assembly. And then on Sundays, it was used for church or for religious services. Make sure you get this jotted down. So we had some interesting discussion about the meeting houses in the other two classes. Someone said, Mr. Boone, is that an original meeting house? And my answer to that is yes and no. It is a meeting house, but let's face facts. If we're talking something that happened almost 400 years ago, do you think that that's the same wood? Probably not all of it. Things have to be replaced. Like even today, with as well as we make roofs, you have to replace them every about 20 to 25 years. Unless you do like a metal roof or something, that's a little bit longer. But again, yes, it's the original meeting house, but things on it have been rebuilt. It's not the exact same thing from the day they built it. They did not build it that good back in the day, as bad as our moms and dads want to tell us. Like, yes, back in the day, when you bought a washing machine, you can expect that joker to last like 30, maybe even 40 years. Now you get one, if you get 10 out of it, you're lucky. They don't make things the way they used to, but they didn't make them so good that they never broke down. That's just not how it worked. This has probably been repaired. If you've been to Old Salem, and most of you have, at least on a field trip, a lot of the things there, yes, they're original. But over time, you do have to repair things. But the meeting house is used for public assembly, which is like the men getting together to make the laws, and your religious services. The New England Colonies. Of the 13 original colonies, there were some that we also call the Northern Colonies. They are listed here. You want to jot these in your notebook. Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts are the New England Colonies. That comes into play later on when we start talking about the differences and we're comparing, contrasting northern colonies, middle colonies, and southern colonies. Whether we're comparing the way that they made money, their political views, the way that they started bending when it came towards the Revolution. We'll look at all of those things, and we'll look at the types of people that lived in each area, and that's what made each area unique. But the New England colonies, the northern colonies, are Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Yes, present-day Maine should be included in that, but it wasn't called Maine then. It was actually part of Massachusetts. So again, talking to my folks at home here while you guys are writing these notes down. Out of that whole giant thing, again, the Puritans, they really didn't, they were kind of out of options. Option 1, do exactly what the king wants you to do, worship that way. And they were like, no, I don't like that option. Option 2, if you don't worship the way the king is telling you to worship, you face persecution, punishment, up to even death. Yeah, that doesn't sound very good either. I'm going to create my own option. Option 3, I'm going to move away from here and go somewhere else where I can have religious freedom, which is the freedom to practice the religion however you want to without any worry of kind of like persecution, being killed, or punishment. So again, the Puritans, 1630, where'd they go? They founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And they did it mainly for religious freedom. So again, in 1630, about 1,000 Puritans got on a boat. We're going to not do it the king's way. We're not going to get punished. We're going to go practice religious freedom our own way in this Massachusetts Bay Colony. What is religious freedom? Well, religious freedom is written for you right here. The ability to practice your religion the way you want without fear of punishment. I'm going to see if I can put that on the whiteboard if it'll let me. If it'll let me. You know how much the whiteboard loves me. Hey, it did. There we go. The ability to practice your religion the way you want to without fear of punishment is called religious freedom. Religious freedom. And the Puritans were willing to risk it all for that, because getting on a boat and traveling all those months across the ocean to go somewhere and worship the way you want to is really sticking your neck out for something that you believe in. Right? That's really sticking your neck out there. That's really going out there all the way, for real. That's kind of scary, honestly, to think that you would just be like, I'm packing up. I'm not just moving 30 minutes to another county, like I used in my example of me going to another county if they wouldn't let us use technology in Davidson County. They're moving to a whole new country. That's out there. So again, this religious freedom thing, this freedom to practice your religion the way you want to without any fear of punishment, was pretty important to these Puritans. So important, they got on a boat, moved to a completely different country, and in 1630, founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Now, the New England colonies. So this is where they would have been living, right? Because they were part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which is a New England colony. This is not the place that you want to go live if you're going to live in the colonies and you think, oh, I'm just going to go there, get me a nice little house, and I'm going to farm every day and just kind of chill. Here's the reason why. The soil here was terrible. It was, I'm not talking little tiny rocks, big rocks. So you're trying to like plow the soil and your plow keeps getting broke because the big giant rocks that are in the soil. Horrible soil, and even when you got it tilled, it didn't grow plants very well because the soil wasn't good. And number two, if you watch football at all, you know this is true, right? Anytime I watch a New England Patriots game, horrible weather. Every single time. It's either snowing or pouring down rain, and everybody in the stands is freezing and they look miserable. Probably because they're Patriots fans, but hey, that's not my problem. Anyway, you couldn't grow enough food to eat. Whoa, what in the world? You couldn't grow enough food to eat and also have enough food to sell, to make money. There were no cash crops in the New England colonies. It just wasn't possible. So they had to do other things. Now, what they did have in the New England colonies was lots of timber, whole bunch of trees to chop down, and the fishing and whaling was fantastic. So, Here's what probably happened. What probably happened. They had a small garden at home that the kids and mom took care of while dad was off being a lumberjack or being a fisherman to help provide for the family food and also have income to help survive. And that's important to know. Because they had such good fishing, and if you kind of look here, all of this is located along the coast. They were able to open up a lot of ports. Now, a port is a place where a boat comes in and parks, dumps off the stuff they're bringing to you, puts the stuff they're taking back on it, and then they put it in reverse and back on out in the sea, and they go back to where they came from. And then they get to there and they do the same thing, and then they come back to see you again later. So it's extremely important to understand, like, you had to work in the forest chopping down trees, or you had to work on the oceans catching fish or chasing whales in order to live in the New England colonies. It was really, really harsh and not really fun to be there. New England became a major center for trading, buying, and selling. So lots of people would pull their boats, different countries would pull their boats into here so that they could buy, sell, and trade in the ports. What is a port? Well, here you go. A harbor town or a city where a ship stops to load and unload goods. I feel like I just said that. Gosh, you did. A port is a harbor town or a city where ships stop to load and unload goods. I come over, I bring you some tea, I bring you some food items that you can't really get in America's from England. I dump them all off on the port. You have furs that you've been harvesting, fish that you've been harvesting, whale blubber, lumber. I put all that back on my ship, and I travel back to where I came from to give them the stuff that we just traded for, or that I had sold to you, or that you may have dropped mostly stuff off to me and I bought it, like sugar was probably extremely important. And we'll get to why sugar was insane after a while. That's not too far down the road.